UFC Fight Night, Amanda Lemos versus Jéssica Andrade. Welcome to the full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and as usual, giving you our fight-by-fight breakdown and analysis from that betting perspective. Here to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Speaking of comments, of course, we have heard the listeners. The listeners are preferring just one full card prediction video as opposed to breaking it down between the main card and the prelim card. If you feel differently, again, let us know in the comments. It's just everyone is liking the full card approach instead. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We have 12 fights on this UFC Fight Night. Again, Amanda Lemos versus Jéssica Andrade being the main event. But of course, before we get to that main event, we're going to start with fight number one on the prelims. And we have Dean Barry taking on Mike Jackson. For this fight, Dean Barry, UFC debut. He last fought in December. He's a multiple-time kickboxing world champion. His nickname is the Sniper. That kind of tells you what you can anticipate in terms of his style. He actually has a karate-like, almost Wonder Boy-ish, almost Michael Venom Page-ish type of style. Good timing, good kicks, good counter-striking as well. And on top of that, he's a patient striker. So he's going to look to set things up. He's going to use fakes and feints to see if his opponents bite. He's more on the methodical side of things, has a good control of range as well. Mike Jackson, I mean, you're looking at his record there, 0-1, had a no contest. That his last fight was 2018 against CM Punk. I mean, that kind of already tells me everything I need to know for the 37-year-olds here. I don't know how or why he's back in the UFC, but he's a striker, good long jab, good boxer, good technique. And I'll kind of stop there. I mean, although Mike Jackson is a game opponent in that he is a solid striker, it's kind of clear that UFC is making a push for these Irish fighters. There's a few of them lately, especially. I wouldn't be surprised if it has to do something with the Conor McGregor return, but it's evident that these Irish fighters are being pushed. Dean Barry seems to be the next in line. He's younger, he's sharper, he's the more diverse striker. He's as close of a lock as you can find on this card, but at the same time, I don't think the odds are worth it at all. Minus 1100 is way too steep for anyone making their UFC debut. I do expect him to win. I do pick him 10 times out of 10, but I don't know if I'm actually going to be betting on this just due to how steep the odds are. But again, in making a pick, I'm going to go with Dean Barry.
Yeah, you broke it down pretty much at every point, man. Mike Jackson, he's 37 years old. He's known for that fight with CM Punk. He was kind of playing around in that fight, and Dana White wasn't happy, and he said, this guy will never fight in the UFC again. And obviously he's here today, or this weekend. So I don't think the UFC is throwing him a bone. They made it clear on public record they don't like this guy. So I think that they're putting him up against Dean Barry to get crushed. Because when you look at this fight, Mike Jackson's 0-1, and Dean Barry's 4-1. So how does this even get to the UFC? This should be on an LFA card or a Bellator card. The fact this is in UFC, there's questions, like you said, with the Conor comeback. I don't know why this fight is happening, to be honest. But I'm going to go Dean Barry. We know the UFC is not throwing a bone to Mike Jackson. They made it clear they don't like that guy. And yeah, Dean Barry is high-level striking. I think he is going to improve in the grappling enough to keep it on the feet. Both guys are mainly strikers. Mike Jackson definitely can get it to the mat, but he's not a wrestler. He doesn't have that high-level grappling, but he can grapple. But I don't think it's enough here. I think Dean's going to be prepared for if any grappling happens. And on the feet, I think Dean Barry is levels above this guy. So I'm going to go Dean Barry to get it done. But you got to ask yourself, why is this fighting even happening? But Dean Barry is definitely the pick.
Second fight of the prelim, Marcin Prachnio taking on Philipe Lins. For Marcin Prachnio, he's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Ike Villanueva back in June. Switch stance fighter, fights from the outside, really throwing a leg heavy attack, a lot of low kicks, a lot of calf kicks, side kicks for distance, control, some front kicks. He has that karate background, so it's not surprising at all. Hands are okay, not the best in my opinion, but he is tough. He is willing to engage. Striking defense, not the best, although he is tough. He kind of just turtles up against guys that have really good hands. Taking on Felipe Lins, who does have decent hands. Felipe Lins is on a 2-fight losing streak, hasn't fought since June 2020. What's interesting with Felipe Lins here is that he's been a heavyweight since 2018, an undersized heavyweight at that, coming in at about 235, 240 pounds. So the layoff is kind of understandable. I mean, it seems like he's decided to get back into shape, get back into the light heavyweight division. So I'm curious to see what he's going to look coming back in at 205 for the first time since 2017. We know Felipe Lins has solid stand-up, like I mentioned. He has a good long jab. He can put decent punching combinations together, has good punches in general. And I do expect him to kind of control center of the octagon, especially against a Marcin Prachnio, who's going to be more likely to fight from the outside. Interesting with Prachnio, although I don't feel his striking defense is the best, I feel he does pretty decent against punchers, and it's more of a stylistic matchup than anything. It's because that leg heavy approach that he takes. I think it works really well for him, especially in that he'll use the calf kick. You saw it in his fight versus Ike Villanueva. He'll continue to use it. He'll continue to chip away for as long as he needs to. In that same vein, I think about Lins's last fight versus Tanner Boser. Yes, that was at the heavyweight division. Yes, Felipe Lins did get knocked out. But Boser actually implemented a similar game plan to what I expect Marcin Prachnio to do. Boser was fighting from the outside. Boser was throwing calf kicks all night. Lins was not checking those kicks at all. Lins was not able to handle that constant lateral movement from the outside from Boser. Like I said, I expect Prachnio to do the exact same thing. And Prachnio does have a little bit of power. He might be able to finish Lins as well. But either way, forget the finish for a moment if we're just picking a winner. I actually really like Prachnio in the spot. I think there's some good value that's available at -120. And I think stylistically, I'm expecting this match to go very similar to how Felipe Lins versus Tanner Boser went. So for the listeners, you probably want to take a look at that fight, see how that one went. I'm expecting very much the same thing, maybe minus the knockout. But as a result, Marcin Prachnio is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is one of the tougher fights I think on the card. When you look at it, Marcin Prachnio has some good wins on his record. Gilbert Galvao, 29-5. Jake Butler, 7-1. Leandro Ateta is 8-2. Alexandre Machado, 7-1. Khalil Roundtree, Ike Villanueva. So this guy, he has some good wins on his record, and he's effective in his striking. That fight against Khalil, he showed his leg kick approach, and obviously he was able to win a decision in that fight. It's a tough one because when you look at this guy as well, you got to factor in that Sal Malvi, who can't beat anyone in the UFC, was able to get a win off this guy. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to get. I think the win versus Khalil Roundtree, again, I'm going to give credit to Marcin Prachnio for winning that fight. But I think there was something wrong with Khalil. He was not, I think it was more of a situation where Khalil did not show up at all. I don't know his personal matters, but I think Khalil lost the fight. Marcin did not look extraordinarily good in that fight. But again, Khalil looked worse. So Marcin won that fight. I'll be quick, man. I think Philippe Lins is going to win this fight here. This guy, Philippe Lins, is back is against the wall. He had some tough fights against Arlovsky and Tanner Boser. Then he had 5 or 6 fights that were canceled. Dante Mills, November 2020. Ben Rothwell, March 2021. Ben Rothwell, May 2021. Later in May, Ben Rothwell again. OSP, November 13th, 2021. Azamat Murzakanov, December 4th, 2021. So this guy's been itching for a fight. And he's been training. He's been getting in shape. So this could be a blessing in disguise that those fights didn't happen, and he was able to like improve, get himself in good shape, because it shows that even though he didn't fight in a while, he's been getting prepared for fights. So he's been in the gym. He's been preparing for this, and he's cutting down in weight. This is the PFL champion. Let's not forget, before he came to the UFC. I think this is a fight he could win. So I'm gonna go Philipe Lins. I think he has the better boxing in this fight, the power, and I think he's gonna come motivated here, because if he loses, he's out of a job with the UFC. He wins, he keeps his job, and this is definitely a winnable fight. He keeps it standing, he can keep it on the feet, and Philipe Lins likely will have the grappling advantage as well. But on the feet, Philipe Lins is gonna have the power advantage, and I think his boxing is gonna show. Because when I look at Marcin Prachnio, all I'm impressed with are those kicks, those little kicks he does. His boxing is not looking good, and I think that's a spot that Philipe Lins can exploit. So I'm gonna go Philipe Lins. Who's the favorite on this one?
Prachnio is a slight favorite, -120.
Nice. I'm going Philipe Lins on this one. I actually think he gets it done.
All right, let's move on to the third fight of the prelims. We have Aoriqileng versus Cameron Else. For Aoriqileng, he lost to Cody Durden back in November. Stand up, it seems kind of patient, a lot of switch stance, always coming forward, or often coming forward, I should say, controlling the center of the octagon at times. He really only throws punches, not really going to see too many kicks out of him. Picks his shots pretty well, is a sneaky counter puncher as well. And he does have some pop, especially when he is coming forward. I have seen him use takedowns and submissions in fights. That said, he doesn't really have the best takedown defense, but he does have good cardio. You know, he can definitely go full 15 minutes, no problem. And that could play a factor in this fight. He's going up against Cameron Else, who last competed October 2020. That was a loss in his debut to Kyler Phillips. That was on short notice as well. Stand-up is solid, good hands, good diversity in his punches. He's mainly punches as well. Don't really see many kicks from him either. And hasn't shown me anything really in terms of having a ground game. What I'm seeing in this fight is that Cameron Else has dangerous hands. You know, he can be explosive. He could definitely get a victory versus the more patient approach from Aoriqileng, you know, sort of just come out blitzing. That said, I think Aoriqileng maybe is the more complete MMA fighter. To this point, he's shown me more in terms of the ground game. Only 2 UFC fights, but I mean, does have some stats to show for it at 2 takedowns per fight. And in some ways, I think both fighters are as dangerous as each other on the feet in some ways. Although, of course, I do think Cameron Else possesses more power. So I do want to make that clear. I think that perceived ground game advantage for Aoriqileng is what will lead him to victory. I look for him to maybe land a takedown, maybe get some top control late in a close round to kind of sway things in his way. Not a comfortable matchup at all. I mean, this could be a split decision type of fight, or Cameron Else might hurt him and win by knockout. But I'm going to go with the fighter who I believe, again, is the more complete MMA fighter, who has shown me more in terms of a ground game, and who could potentially resort to that ground game to at least steal a round. So Aoriqileng is going to be my pick for many of those reasons.
Yeah, this is a good fight. This is a good fight. One thing I'll give Aoriqileng, one thing we got to give this guy is he's lost fights, definitely. He has losses, but he's been submitted, but he's never been knocked out. This guy's durable. He's gone 3 rounds. He has unanimous decisions. He's fighting guys that are well ahead of him at the time he fights them. Example, I'll give you an example here. He fought Kai Kara-France in 2017. Kai Kara-France was 14-7, and he was 8-3 when they fought. So this guy he'll fight anyone. This guy, so he does have some sketchy matches where the guys he's fighting are not good, but then he does have matches on his record where he's actually gone in there with some killers. And and he survives. He doesn't get finished. He holds his own. He can strike. And in this fight, he might have the wrestling might be equal, or he might have the advantage there. Cameron Else might have the submission advantage, the BJJ. But when you look at Cameron Else, he lost to Carlin Phillips, but he fought in a higher weight class, right? So we got to give him an exception there. But Brad Evans 3-14, Mark Stevens 0-1, Aiden James 4-0, Tom Major 0-0, Tom Turdman 1-1, Jordan Ranshaw 0-0, Damo Whedon 9-7 he lost. So like what I'm basically saying is this guy has fought nobody, or he has beaten nobody, and his wins are against people that are just beginning or have losing records. So when I'm looking at his highlights, or I'm looking at his fights, and I'm seeing him be like so successful, he looks like Chuck Liddell in some fights. Again, you got to look at who he's fighting, right? So yeah, it's a tough fight because Aoriqileng is not the smartest fighter IQ wise, but I think how this fight goes, Cameron Else has that first round to get this done. After that first round, he's not ready for this. I think his cardio is going to crash. And Qileng, as the fight goes on, Qileng is definitely going to win the fight, second, third round if it gets there. And if anyone gets hurt, if Qileng gets hurt, he's going to keep going. If Cameron Else gets hurt, the fight's going to change immediately. So I like Aori. I think he's more durable. I think he has better cardio, and I think that's going to be important here if Cameron Else can't get the finish. And I don't think he will get the finish. I think this is a fight that Aori gets done here. So I'm going to go Aoriqileng here. I just think that he's at a higher level at this point.
Fight number 4, Tyson Pedro taking on Ike Villanueva. Tyson Pedro hasn't competed in over 3.5 years. He lost to Shogun way back in December 2018. From his footage, of course, 3.5 years ago, I mean, decent active jab. He fights at range. He might be fighting from the outside. Almost has that OSP style of tactical stand-up. He has a solid cage clinch. He's physically strong. Good on the ground too. Don't expect him to be an overwhelming wrestler by any means, but almost a takedown per fight. He has shown me some ability to land those takedowns. He has shown me good top control, and he has shown me some grappling IQ in terms of what he's doing down there. Solid fighter. I'm curious how he looks after almost a 4-year layoff. I think he is 30 years old now, if I'm not mistaken. So that's always a very interesting time to take time off when you're sort of a younger fighter and now you're headed into your athletic prime. So, I mean, we might see a Tyson Pedro that's better than we've ever seen from him. But what we have seen from him, he is a decent overall fighter. Ike Villanueva, 2-fight losing streak. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Lost to Nick Nagaramanu back in October. Pretty much has that boxing stance on the feet. His attack is primarily hands, doesn't really use any kicks, likes to come forward. But even though it is just hands, diversifies his punches pretty well. He strikes to the body, which works well for him. Striking does lose technique at times. He can get a bit reckless, but I'll keep the prediction itself short. I think outside of a puncher's chance, there's no reason, in my opinion, to think that Villanueva can win this fight. Again, outside of that puncher's chance, he might land a punch that could change the direction of it. I'm not saying that's impossible by any means, but I think that's his only way to win the fight. I think Pedro is better all around. Again, just more complete of a striker, can resort to, an effective clinch, can possibly take the fight to the ground. That said, I mean, the odds are kind of steep, right? I mean, this is a Tyson Pedro that's coming off of an almost 4-year layoff. So you'd kind of wish that was more in the -250, -300 area. -550 might be way too steep, but I'll admit, I don't think Ike Villanueva is a UFC level fighter. So I'm debating jumping on this anyway. Tyson Pedro is going to be my pick for sure. In terms of a bet, I'm still contemplating.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. Tyson Pedro's been out for so long, but Let's go to Ike first. 18 wins, 13 losses. If you haven't seen this guy fight, give you an idea. He is straight old school. He's old school, eh? Harris, he's old school. He's like 2008, 2007. Those guys that come out and they have the hands like Paul Buentello. If you know MMA, pull up Paul Buentello. That's a guy, man. He got crushed by Arlovsky, but that's a veteran in the game. But the idea is basically Buentello, just like Villanueva, they can only strike and throw hands. The other aspects of the games they didn't learn, and this is something that as MMA evolved, everyone became well-rounded, and everyone learned the other aspects. I think Villanueva stuck in 2007, man, 2005. He has that barroom boxing style down, so he definitely could knock this guy out. But you got to think Pedro gets it to the mat. That's where he's gonna make. That's where he's gonna make a living in this fight here. The grappling is huge. The discrepancy as far as Tyson's a way better grappler. So I'm gonna go Tyson Pedro. He's been out for long, but if he comes back 65%, 70%, that's enough. Just grapple this guy, get him to the mat, get a submission. But if you play striking with Villanueva, remember Villanueva is one-dimensional, and that's the striking. So if you want to play his game, anyone can win that. But Tyson uses that grappling. Villanueva is a fish out of water, right? In that situation, he's going to be in the deep end there, and he's not going to do well. So I'm going to go Tyson Pedro. Hopefully, he goes with the heavy grappling approach and gets the win here. But yeah, he has that big advantage. So Tyson's my pick.
Fight number 5, Dwight Grant versus Sergey Khandozhko. Dwight Grant split decision loss for Francisco Trinaldo back in October. Very explosive. The movement is somewhat awkward. Throws punches at pretty unique angles. Puts a lot of jabs out there to try to find his timing, try to find his spacing. But oftentimes he's swinging too wildly, trying to land haymakers that end up leaving him open. Or sometimes his hands just aren't active enough and he's taking pictures, as they would say. He's kind of just watching his opponent. Fights from the outside, uses his reach to his advantage. He's going to have 2 inches in this fight specifically. Doesn't offer really much from a ground game perspective, so I do expect him to keep the fight on the feet. He's going up against Sergey Khandozhko. Again, a lot of fighters on this card that have not competed in a while. He hasn't competed in about 2.5 years. Again, similar to the last fight with Tyson Pedro, it's interesting considering that Sergey Khandozhko is now 29 years old. So again, extended layoff, could be in his athletic prime. That could be relevant because, again, we could see a better version of Sergey Khandozhko than we've ever seen. From his fights before the layoff, he's somebody that seems to have pretty solid stand-up, nice fakes, nice feints, decent movement, good long jab, decent technique. Fights from the outside. He is a bit passive, though. Can't really change things up. Doesn't really strike first. Doesn't really look to take control. And I'm never really a fan of those types of fighters from a judging perspective. This is a tough matchup to accurately call. I mean, due to the time off alone, that might raise way too many question marks. We see the odds are pretty close on this fight as well. So I wouldn't even recommend betting on this. I can see Dwight Grant winning the match. I mean, neither guy is overwhelming on the feet. And I feel like while Grant has the power advantage, that's something that he could potentially use to pull out the win here. But my reasoning for actually choosing Sergey Khandozhko in this fight is a couple of things. I think he's a bit more technically sound on the feet. I think he can be a better point fighter in these 50-50 situations. Russian fighter, although he doesn't really have wrestling numbers to his name, you got to assume he has some kind of wrestling knowledge. I have seen him show me wrestling technique and wrestling know-how in his previous fights, although again, not something that he has resorted to, but also again, maybe a 2.5-year layoff can change that. But my key reasoning for choosing Sergey Khandozhko here is that although Grant has the power advantage, Sergey does have pop, and Dwight Grant has shown that he's a little bit chinny. at least in my opinion. So a few reasons why I'm going with Khandozhko. Again, cleaner. Dwight Grant has a bit of a chin issue, I should say. And Khandozhko might show us some wrestling that we've never really seen out of him before. So, yeah, I'm going Sergey Khandozhko on this one. I'm not going to recommend betting just because, again, there are too many question marks. But I'm almost betting on the fact that a 2.5 year layoff for somebody headed into their athletic prime will produce a better fighter than we've seen from him previously. So, again, my pick is going to be Sergey Khandozhko.
Yeah, this fight, when I look at this fight, let's start with Dwight Grant. This guy's going to have the athleticism. He has long arms. This guy's going to have the power advantage in this fight. So he can definitely exploit those areas, and he can definitely get a finish. He can definitely knock out Sergey. Sergey's been out of action for a while, so there's a chance he can come in rusty. When I look at Sergey, though, I think Sergey is just more efficient as far as the striking goes. He might be the more technical striker. Plus, he's the more well-rounded MMA fighter. I think he could implement some grappling in this match, get some rounds that way. In the fight versus Kabilov, that's a tough fight. That's a tough fight. He was able to get the first round in that fight on 2 judges' scorecard. So whether he really won that round or not, the fact is he brought the fight to Kabilov, and that's someone that I look at highly. The only concern I have is this is a Russian versus an American. With the politics going on right now, a lot of the Russians, when it comes to close fights, they're not getting any love with the judges. They're not getting any of the fights that can go either way. Well, it seems like they're never going the Russians' way. Like, they're not getting the exception. Like the Peter Yan fight, that's arguable. And the fight that's on my mind as well since the Ukraine war was the Tagir Ulanbekov. Is that his name, Tagir Ulanbekov?
Yep.
Yes. So that fight as well. That's a fight that versus Tim Elliott, a fight that I thought, like, I was watching the fight, I thought I knew MMA. I thought he won the fight, but he lost a unanimous decision, right? So yeah, so it's tough. I think Sergey's gonna win the fight. I think he's gonna come back. He's the younger guy, 29 to 37. I think he has the better game. I think he's more well-rounded, but I do think Dwight Grant is live, super live, because he does have the physical advantages and he does have the power. He can knock out Sergey in this fight. But I'm gonna go with Sergey. I'm gonna roll the dice. I'm gonna take Sergey to win this fight. I think he's the better fighter. I think he gets it done here.
Fight number 6 and the final fight of the prelims, we have Jourdain Wright versus Marc-André Barriault. Jourdain Wright, he lost to Bruno Silva back in December. Karate style on the feet, kick heavy approach, decent tie clinch. Although he doesn't really have the best hands, he does have some power behind it. I have seen him wobble a few guys in his UFC fight so far. I feel like Jourdain Wright has a really suspect chin, though, especially when engaging. He leaves himself open, and he seems to get impacted by his opponent's power. Marc-André Barriault lost to Chidi Njokwani back in February. You remember that? That was kind of a one-punch KO very early in the fight. Good jab. He covers up well. Looks for counter-punching opportunities. He mixes in the calf kicks as well. Puts the pressure on. He comes forward. He's a decent striker overall. Decent combinations. He does have some power. I don't really think he has the best takedown defense, although I don't think it'll matter in this fight. And again, like I said, he struggles against fighters that do have a ground game. He's a bit one-dimensional from that perspective, although, again, to reiterate, I don't think that would be relevant in this fight. What I do like about him is that he has a pretty consistent pace on the feet. Just a decent fighter overall. Wright has that puncher's chance because he does have some power behind him. But I see Barriault just really having a favorable matchup here. I think his striking will be more effective, especially if he can close distance, especially if, and again, I do think that he can avoid that power versus a striker that is much less technically sound than his previous opponent. Of course, Marc-André Barriault's last fight gives you concerns regarding his chin. But like I said, Jourdain Wright just doesn't really have that technique behind his power. the way that Chidi and Joquani did. So I think Barriault will be able to kind of avoid what Jordan Wright has from a puncher's chance perspective. Again, outside of that, closing distance, using that dirty boxing, using his diversified striking, I think those are going to be key factors for him for pulling this one out. So I'm going Marc-André Barriault on this.
Yeah, let's go quick on this one. I think Jordan Wright has that first round. I think he has that first round. He can get the finish. First 3 minutes of the fight, I think he's going to be live. But as the fight goes on, I think Marc-André is going to get into range, get it close, hold him against the cage, and wear down. As the fight goes on, Barriault has the better cardio. So I'm going to go Marc-André. I just don't think Jordan Wright can finish him in the first couple minutes. Again, it's possible because I think that's how the fight's going to go. Either Wright finishes him in the first couple minutes, or Marc-André takes over later in the first round, and then he just continues to take over as the fight goes on. Yeah, so I'm going to go Marc-André Barriault here. I just think he's a more durable guy. And I think the grappling, the clinching, I think that's going to wear on Jordan Wright.
All right, so let's move on to then the first fight of the main card. ESPN just not fully updated in terms of removing the fights that have been called off. So we are going to go to fight number 1 on the main card. And we're looking at Lando Vannata versus Charles Jourdain. A really good featherweight matchup here. Charles Jourdain, we know that he beat Andre Ewell back in December. Real good dynamic striker as a southpaw, switch stance fighter we see as well. He has some good pop. He has good explosiveness. 8 of his 12 professional wins are via KO TKO. So that is something you always have to look out for in a Charles Jourdain fight, especially that he's a high action fighter. Good counter striker, good calf kick. He has good forward pressure, and he has the cardio to go along with it, which is a key factor in this fight for sure. Lando Vannata, almost a year since his last fight, he had that split decision win over Mike Grundy back in May. Smooth switch stance type of style, good rhythm, good timing, very light on the feet, good calf kick. Does throw one shot at a time though, right? Somebody who almost admires his work too much. Fairly quick hands. He keeps his hands down. Good reaction time, good counters, so it doesn't hurt him too much. But again, with Lando Vannata, opposite to Charles Jourdain from a cardio perspective, Vannata definitely slows down as the fight goes on. Really good striking match here. Like I said, I mean, this fight has the ability to be one of the better fights of the night. Could be that fight of the night type of feel. Lando might be slightly better technically with the striking. Jourdain's activity and forward pressure, in my opinion, nullifies any technical advantage that Vannata would have. Lando's cardio did hold up in his last fight, but that is still something that you have to at least think about, especially versus a Jourdain who goes just as hard in the 15th minute as he does in the first minute. And kind of because that constant cardio, constant pace, constant aggression, I like Jourdain here, especially lately in the UFC. What I'm noticing is that it's the aggressors, it's the people kind of pushing the pace. Even if they're not exactly winning the fight, they seem to be pulling out the decisions lately. And I'm looking at Jourdain winning round 3 from that aggression and pace, while they might potentially split rounds 1 and 2. So I think, Jourdain will just kind of dog it out. Will kind of, outpace, out aggressive, even just reactions to strikes. I think he's going to kind of get the vote of the judges in a fight that could be really close. This could be a split decision type of fight, or, a unanimous decision for Jourdain, where you yourself are kind of questioning what happened in one of those rounds. But nonetheless, again, in making a pick, I'm looking at Charles Jourdain for this one. Should be a really good fight, though.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. This is a hard fight for me, because again, when you look at this fight, Vannata has fought the better guys, and he's fought much better guys than Charles Jourdain, and he's held his own. And in this fight, he's gonna have a wrestling advantage as well. He can easily take this fight to the mat, get around, and then win one of the other 2 rounds with the striking. His striking, again, as you said, could be more technical. It's tough. It's tough. Like I was going back and forth on this fight. Now I landed on Charles Jourdain, and I'll explain. I just think that he's a bit more explosive. He might be more active. He's the younger fighter, um, and I just think that even though Lando has the wrestling advantage, I'm not sure he's going to go to it. I think if he goes to the wrestling, he can make this an easy win on his side. So I think this is a fight that can literally go either way. I wouldn't make a bet on this fight. I really wouldn't. But I don't think Lando's going to use the wrestling. I think he likes to. I think he's going to be confident in his striking abilities and believe that he can win a striking match. And in that situation, I just think Jourdain's speed, I think his explosiveness could help him out here. Again, this fight can go either way. I can easily pick Lando Vannata, but I'm going to go Charles Jourdain. He's looking better his last fight. I know it wasn't against the best opposition, but he is definitely showing being put in tough situations. He's definitely improving each fight. So I expect him to come out here a better fighter. And I think he can get it done here. So again, this is a fight that I think is literally 50-50 coin flip. But I'm going to go Charles Jourdain here to get this done.
Second fight on the main card, we have Mudaerji taking on Manel Kape. Another close fight here. In addition to that first fight of the main card, Mudaerji, 3-fight winning streak. He beat Zarukadashev back in January 2021. So it has been over a year since his last fight. Southpaw, light on the feet, high IQ, pretty diverse striker as well. He has a good jab, good counter striker, good speed on the feet. He's a good MMA striker. Also has some good takedown defense from what I've seen. I don't think that'll be relevant in this fight, but good to note. And also really good striking defense, especially with the footwork that he has, especially with the timing that he has as well. Manel Kape finally finding his footing in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He last competed back in December. That was against Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Really good performance in that fight. He's a southpaw as well. Always interesting to see a southpaw versus southpaw matchup. Good striking speed, good striking accuracy, great timing, good striking IQ, good counter punching. He does have some switch stance in him, so I'm curious to see how much of that he will use. Good in and out movement. He'll use the feints, the fakes, the level changes, and he's explosive. He should have that athleticism advantage. He can use that explosiveness to shoot for a takedown. We see he lands almost one per fight. Much more likely to keep it on the feet, though. So again, like I said, I don't really anticipate the ground game being a factor in this fight for either fighter. I think this is going to be a high-level striking match. And I like the skills that both guys bring to the table. I think that, Sue, of course, will have a significant height and reach advantage, 3 inches in height, 4 inches in reach. And I think those will be key for him. And again, like you said about the last fight, to me, this is a 50-50 fight. I think both guys are just as capable as each other. But I feel inclined to go with Mudaerji. In some ways, you just kind of go with the better value. If I feel it's a 50-50 fight, I'm going to go with the fighter that is a slight underdog, plus 155 on the side of Mudaerji. But again, I think the difference between these two is that Sue is a little bit more elusive. Yes, Kape is more explosive, more dangerous. So, of course, he can get the knockout. But I think Sue is a little bit more elusive, slightly better with that striking defense. He absorbs less than he lands, whereas Manel Kape, he's not quite there, at least statistically. So, I'm looking at the slightest of advantages for Mudaerji, the slightest of reasons as to why I'm picking him. And I'm liking the fact that he is an underdog. So Mudaerji is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Honestly, Manel Kape likely wins the fight here, with his speed, with the athleticism, with the wrestling. That's the big thing, is that Manel Kape was actually talking. Where did I see it? I'm not sure where I saw it, but if you look, you'll find it. Manel Kape said that he's going to be coming to wrestle against Mudaerji. So he's basically admitting that striking is not going to be good, because Mudaerji is high level striking, high level. He has good hands. This guy, and he's good with the feints. He's good with the counters. It's a tough fight. Manel Kape should win this fight. He should definitely win this fight. I should say Manel Kape's going to win this fight. But again, this is another fight you don't want to bet, because as much as Manel Kape should win this fight, he has lost a fighter similar to Mudaerji. And if you actually look at his career in Rising, I was following this guy in Japan. I was a big fan, and I'm still a big fan of Manel Kape. But when you look at his fight versus Kai Asakura, he's another striker, Japanese or Chinese striker, similar to Sue. Good hands, had good length, and he beat Manel Kape. The rematch, Manel Kape won, but again, this is a style that has beaten him before. So I think this fight can go either way. I'm not sure Manel Kape's going to keep that wrestling strategy. I think if it stays standing, I think Mudaerji could win a striking fight versus this guy. And I'm going to slightly lean the fight goes that way, that it's a striking fight. So I'm going to go Mudaerji, but only because I don't believe Manel Kape's going to be able to wrestle for 3 rounds. I'm not sure. And Manel Kape doesn't have many submissions on his record. I think he has 1 submission on his record here, so he might have 1. But Mudaerji, his losses are all by like submission, majority, right? So he got a choke, arm lock. Okay, yeah. Everything all 4 of his losses are by submission. So, and he's gone 3 rounds, multiple times. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Mudaerji upset, but again, don't run with this pick. But what it should tell you is thinking Manel Kape's gonna win for sure. Now you got to second guess that. This might be just a fight you just don't bet. That's what's good about this channel, because a lot of people are saying Manel Kape 100%, and again, I think he should win the fight. But when you really break down this fight, if he strikes with Mudaerji, he's gonna be at a disadvantage. That's facts. If he strikes at him, so he needs to wrestle. And if he does wrestle, can he keep him on the mat? Can he submit him? Because that's the only way Mudaerji has lost. You got to think, if he doesn't submit him, takedowns will be harder as the fight goes on. And the longer guy, the better striker. And one thing you got to factor, Mudaerji's striking style. Harris, do you agree with this one? Mudaerji's striking style does not require a lot of cardio.
Nope, not at all.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the way he strikes, like, he does not really exert, but he's effective. So, again, tough fight. I would recommend, guys, don't bet this fight, but I'm going to go with the underdog, Mudaerji.
Let's move on with the third fight of the main card. We have Maycee Barber versus Montana De La Rosa. Maycee Barber had that split decision win over Miranda Maverick back in July. Again, kind of a questionable one there. Her stand-up is decent. She's patient. She looks for her shots. She has shown the ability to put pressure on you, come forward. Has good power for the division. Definitely puts her weight into her punches or her hooks specifically. A good clinch against the cage. I like her tight clinch in the stand-up. A lot of elbows, a lot of knees when she's in close. Good takedown defense from what I've seen. Pretty solid on the ground when she does get on top. We see she lands almost a takedown and a half per fight. She has good ground and pound when she does resort to those takedowns. But that's not maybe a strength of hers. She is much more likely to keep it on the feet. I think her biggest fault is that she's not active enough a lot of times in the fight. Doesn't really have enough IQ to change things up if plan A is not working either. So she's, a little frustrating to cheer for when she is the person that you're betting on, because she doesn't really have that ability to change it up. For Montana De La Rosa, she beat Ariane Lipski back in June. Pretty good win there. She has improved stand-up. I would say it is serviceable at this point now. Still flat-footed, though. Still heavy on the feet. Still has some holes in her game in terms of her striking. But we know her goal is going to be to try to land a takedown. I mean, she's a 3-time All-American wrestler in high school, has that wrestling background, has a strong body lock, She's a good grappler to go along with it. We see her takedown number there at 2.25 per fight, and the submission average at over 1 per fight. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know in terms of her prowess on the ground. This is a tricky matchup here because I do think Barber has the edge on the feet for sure. And I think Barber, again, has some wrestling, has some takedown defense, and again, just that overall strength for this flyweight division to potentially limit De La Rosa's advantage with the ground game. But sometimes there could just be levels. I mean, De La Rosa simply is the higher level wrestler, and she might just be able to show that. I think De La Rosa can get round one, and I think this fight could look in a way where De La Rosa might cruise her way. But then I do think Barber will correct her takedown defense. I do think in round 2 and in round 3, it will be much harder for Montana De La Rosa to land that takedown for the remainder of the fight. And I think as a result, if it's going to stay on the feet, I think Maycee Barber is going to be able to pull those rounds out, rounds 2 and 3, with her striking advantages, get a close decision. And after that split decision win versus Miranda Maverick, makes me wonder if the UFC is kind of pushing her a bit. So Maycee Barber is going to be my pick. She's somebody that I can see the UFC like. She's young. She could be a face. I don't think she's talented enough to be that face, but UFC seems to kind of still be betting on her. So Maycee Barber, if it's close, I can see the judges swaying it in her favor, and I do anticipate it being close. I anticipate De La Rosa winning round 1. Round 2 is going to be a toss-up depending on who is winning for longer in the round. And I think round 3 is going to go to Maycee Barber. And as a result, I think the decision goes to Maycee Barber. So Maycee Barber is going to be my pick. But again, I'm not betting on this one at all because De La Rosa could just be levels above with the wrestling and could control in all 3 rounds.
Yeah, I don't think highly of Montana De La Rosa. See her fight versus Mayra Bueno Silva. She got 3 takedowns, and the fight was a draw, right? Mayra Bueno Silva had 52 strikes. She just fought last week. So if people are listening, wondering who that is, that's the girl that fought last week. I don't remember who she fought. Yanan or something like that. But anyways, she got 3 takedowns. So basically, Mayra Bueno Silva was getting back to her feet. She had a fight versus Andrea Lee, 2019, got 5 takedowns, and she lost that fight, unanimous decision, 73 strikes to 14. Like that's crazy, right? And then she's winning striking matches versus Mara Romero Barella, can't strike, and then she beat Nadia Kassem, getting 2 takedowns, and obviously it was a lot of grappling. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is Montana De La Rosa is not a good fighter. Like, she's decent against the middle of the pack. I'm not high on Maycee Barber. I think she lost her last fight against Miranda Maverick. But in this fight, she's a tougher girl. Let's be real. She has that dog in her that I think she can negate a lot of the takedowns. Montana has wrestling, but I don't think it's like I don't think it's even better than what's that girl's name that Maycee fought? Miranda Maverick. I don't think she has better wrestling than Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick will charge at you like Goldberg and spear you and get the takedown. I don't think Montana has that type of wrestling. So I think she has a slower, methodic wrestling, and I think that Maycee Barber can get the underhooks, keep it on the feet, get the sprawls going. I think she has better striking, and I think Maycee might even be able to get some takedowns here. I'm pretty confident Maycee wins this fight. Like, I'm not sold on this Montana girl since the Ultimate Fighter, right? So I'm gonna go Maycee Barber here to get this done here, and I'm pretty sure she wins this fight.
All right.
She has that dog. She has that dog in her, right? So I like her in this spot.
Let's move on to the 4th fight of the main card. Again, we see ESPN not fully updated here. It is not Tanner Boser versus Alexander Romanov, but instead we have a fill-in. Chase Sherman will be taking on Alexander Romanov. And for this fight, I mean, I won't spend too much time on it as a result. You have a striker versus wrestler type of situation here. Chase Sherman being the striker, decent overall stand up, likes the leg kick as part of his combinations. His combinations are clean and diverse. Doesn't really overswing, keeps it controlled. Doesn't have the best striking defense though. No real head movement. And then again, you have the wrestler who is Alexander Romanov. Has that power wrestling style, good takedowns, good takedown technique, decent speed with his takedown entries, good top position. Doesn't have the best striking, of course, doesn't have the best striking defense, although it is something that is improving fight by fight. Again, short notice for Sherman as he fills in for Tanner Boser. Sherman doesn't really have that aggressive one punch power type of style to be a huge threat on the feet versus Romanov, who has some holes in his game in terms of his striking. Whereas Romanov, of course, has a significant advantage on the ground. I have seen Romanov gas out, and initially that was a concern when he was initially set to face Tanner Boser, but I've also seen Chase Sherman gas out. So I don't see that as a huge, again, threat to either fighter's game because they both get tired. Outside of a heavyweight beware puncher's chance on the side of Chase Sherman, really I see Romanov cruising his way to victory here, having no problem landing the takedowns for at least 2 rounds, and then just having to survive round 3, which I think he will be able to do. If not, continue to implement his style that has been working for him in the first 2 rounds. The odds are not out on this one yet. I assume they'll be steep in favor of Romanov. I assume that means I probably don't bet because it still is a heavyweight fight and heavyweight beware at all times. But in making a pick, again, at least 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with Alexander Romanov in this position.
Yeah, you have to, man. 100%. Romanov, against Espinal, he definitely showcased a bit of that, a bit of the issue with the cardio. But Juan Espinal is a high-level wrestler. So the exchanges were a bit different. In this fight, Chase Sherman can't wrestle at all compared to Romanov. Romanov is like this guy's like a Brock Lesnar. This guy just runs through you, right? So first 2 rounds, he's going to come out strong. He might slow down in the third. But at that point, I think it's out of Chase Sherman's reach if he lasts that long. There's a good chance Romanov finishes them in the first or second round. But I'm going to go Romanov. Yeah, you should definitely get it done. I don't see Chase Sherman taking the all away.
All right, so let's move on to our co-main event of the evening. We have Clay Guida versus Claudio Puelles. Clay Guida beat Leonardo Santos back in December. We know his MO, toughness, wrestling on the feet. He's going to give you a lot of movement, a high pace, definitely willing to engage, definitely willing to brawl. He's tough, a veteran. But we know, again, Guida is going to aggressively look to take the fight to the ground, look for that takedown in almost any fight that he's in. He's also a cardio machine, so he gives a lot of guys problems from that perspective. Claudio Puelles, he's on a 4-fight win streak. He beat Chris Grutzmacher back in December. Muay Thai style fighter, bit of a hesitant striker because he doesn't really have the most active significant strike punching stats. Has a bit of a ground game, has submissions like we saw in his last fight. I've seen him pull guard to stay on his back, which I don't like, versus a Guida type fighter. I've seen him scramble pretty decently if he is taken down and kind of intelligently use that grappling to his advantage. Again, either to protect himself, to get back up, or to possibly reverse position. I have seen him land takedowns. We see statistically almost 3 per fight. Puelles definitely is the sharper striker here. Puelles has all the tools that you need and in this one. High-level grappling, good IQ, even in guard. Again, the sharper striking. But stylistically, I think this matchup is very tough for either fighter. I think the key for Clay Guida, and actually the reason I think he is the slight favorite, or was the slight favorite, I should say, at one point in this fight. It looks like the odds have flipped in the side of Puelles. But I think it's because, again, he has that ability to grind out these close rounds. I think about Puelles' last fight. If he didn't land that knee bar against Chris Grutzmacher, he might have lost. And when I think about Clay Guida, much more capable on the ground than Chris Grutzmacher. And Grutzmacher was able to use top control and just put himself in a bad position where his knee got locked up and he was forced to tap. But you put a higher IQ ground artist like a Clay Guida in there, he probably doesn't put himself in that position. And he is able to win that round and thus win the fight as a result. So, I question marks with Puelles in terms of his approach, his IQ, the way he puts himself in compromising positions. And I think he takes advantage of that versus fighters that don't necessarily know what they're doing in those situations. But I think Clay Guida does know what he's doing in that situation. I think he'll be able to avoid that danger. And I think his aggressiveness from a takedown perspective, from a top control perspective, from a pace, from an aggression perspective, I think these are going to be things that work in his favor to allow him to pull out the win. I never like going with a guy with double-digit losses, almost 20 losses at this point, but I am assessing the stylistic matchup itself, and my analysis is leading me to Clay Guida. So Clay Guida will be my pick.
Yeah, man, I hear you, man. I'm not impressed with that guy. I'm not impressed with that guy at all, man. Like, I know he got that win against Jourdain Levitt. He got that fluke win, or that win against Grutzmacher. But I think this is a different type of fight. I think Puelles, as the fight goes on, I don't think he has the cardio, the pace that Clay can push. I think the big thing in this fight is the pace. I think that's the big thing, is that Clay's going to push a different type of pace than what Puelles is used to. When it comes to the striking, I don't even think like Puelles might be the better striker, but the pace, the activity that Guida has, he could be the more effective striker. He might be landing the better shots. And again, I think he's going to get some takedowns here. I think he's going to avoid the submissions, put his head to the chest, get the takedown, avoid headlocks, and I think he's going to do well there. So I like, only concern is obviously the age. For me, it's just the age. But Guida has shown in his last fight that after getting rocked, he got saved by the ref for not stopping the fight. He was able to come back and win the fight against Leonardo Santos, right? So he has shown that he still has that heart, and that is going to be a big thing in this fight. So I'm going to go Clay Guida reluctantly because of his age, but I think that I don't like what Puelles offers. I'm not impressed by this guy, and I think this is a fight. If there's any fight Clay Guida can win, this is that type of fight. So I'm going to go Clay Guida to get it done.
All right, so then let's move on to our main event of the evening. We have Amanda Lemos versus Jéssica Andrade. Amanda Lemos, split decision win versus Angela Hill back in December. 5 wins in a row now at this point. Very impressive record, 11 wins, 1 loss. She has that Thai style of stand-up, almost that Davison Figueroa style of stand-up. Good jab, good pop, good speed, pretty dynamic on the feet. She's really explosive as well as a striker. Good kicks. She used to compete at 135, so we know that she's pretty big and physically strong as a 115er in this strawweight division. 87% takedown defense in the UFC. Angela Hill did take her down once, but that's really the only takedown that she's faced in 6 UFC fights. She can also land the takedown of her own, almost 1.5 per fight, over 50% accuracy. Has a good strong ground game with some vicious ground and pound. Going to be interesting to see if she can land that against somebody as tough as Jéssica Andrade, who beat Cynthia Calvillo back in September. Again, interesting to see her come back down to 115. We know that she competed at 125 for a while. On the feet, she fights in the pocket. She looks to keep the distance close. Her hands stay tight. She does march her opponents down a bit. She likes to engage. Throws a lot of combinations in those moments, a lot of looping hooks, borderline brawling style, really. Physically strong and uses that to her advantage, especially with her wrestling and with her grappling. She lands almost 3 takedowns a fight at this point. Good accuracy as well, about 55%. and she's also a BJJ black belt, so she's legitimately credentialed, and doesn't just rely on brute strength as an example. And she has a good defensive guard. Has the ability to scramble, get back to her feet if she is taken down. I think both fighters kind of have that ability. So that's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I mean, I think there's things to like about both fighters. There's things to like or be for on the side of both fighters. But I think there's sort of one key concern that I have, legitimate cardio concerns for Amanda Lemos, especially in what will be a 5-round setting. She was visibly slowing down after the first round in her last fight versus Angela Hill. And I can see Andrade pushing a similar pace that an Angela Hill type of fighter would push. So I can possibly anticipate Lemos gassing out the same way. It puts her on the back foot when she's gassed. It takes away from her activity, makes her a lot more hittable. I like that constant pressure that Andrade puts on. I think that could be a significant factor here, like I mentioned. I think Andrade, could have a huge cardio advantage, especially for rounds 4 and 5. Ultimately, I'm seeing Lemos when I'm assessing this. I like Lemos. I think she's somebody that could be a title competitor or a title challenger at some point. And I mean, let's be real, UFC definitely would like some new blood in the strawweight division. I wouldn't be surprised if Lemos does pull it out, if this does get her a title shot. But when I'm analyzing this fight, I'm really only seeing Lemos as having a puncher's chance for this type of matchup. I think she's very capable of landing on that puncher's chance. We know she has the power to back it up as well. But I'm asking myself, who do I feel more confident in? Who do I trust more? Who has been in bigger situations? Who has the cardio advantage? And who can resort to wrestling, or at least making it ugly for the sake of draining Lemos's gas tank? And that person is Jéssica Andrade. So I actually really like this matchup for her. Not guaranteed by any means. Either fighter can win. Both fighters are dangerous. But Andrade has been in these situations before, whereas Lemos has not. So I'm going Jéssica Andrade, main event. I think she's going to pull it out. I definitely understand why she's a minus 175. I might bite on it. I want to see what they look like come weigh-in, come face-off. But analytically, I'm liking Jéssica Andrade in this one. So Zan is having some technical difficulties, but the show must go on. He and I did have a conversation about how he feels about this main event, I should say. And, in a lot of ways, he had a lot of the same things that I had to say. Really what he feels is that Amanda Lemos, she's going to be dangerous for the first round or two. But cardio, again, is a concern. And especially as this fight goes on, round 3, round 4, round 5, Jéssica Andrade can continue that, whereas Lemos cannot. So Zan will be going with Jéssica Andrade as well, just to make that official. And again, from an analytical perspective, very much agreeing with some of the same points here. The show must go on. I will end it sort of solo here. And of course, we're going to take a look at the card itself, considering the entire card and considering who we are potentially looking at as underdog picks, as well as some favorite picks. In terms of underdog pick, I will, of course, start with mine in that case. The main underdog that I'm taking a look at here is Mudaerji. To me, he just has that ability to beat Manel Kape style of fighter. And Manel Kape, I mean, like Zan mentioned, he does lose, or he has lost, to Mudaerji type of fighters. So some pretty decent underdog value there. And in terms of, again, Zan has communicated with me his underdog. And in terms of the underdog that he's looking at, he is taking a look at Philipe Lins versus Marcin Prachnio. That will be his underdog pick. And in terms of some parlay action, again, I will give you Zan's picks. He is taking a look at a couple of fighters here. He's taking a look at Maycee Barber. He is taking a look at Jéssica Andrade. and he is also taking a look at Aoriqileng Aori. So those three fights plus 222, pretty solid there. $100 will return a profit of 221. So of course, total winnings would be 321. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will receive a $554 profit. In terms of parlay picks that I'm taking a look at, this one was a little bit tougher because the fights that I am most confident in, they're not really giving good odds. I mean, I think about the Dean Barry fight. I think about, although it's not posted yet, the Alexander Romanov fight. I even think about the Tyson Pedro fight. And I mean, those three are just really steep. So I think in terms of parlay action, I'm gonna have to take some chances here. And you'll notice that my parlay kind of goes against Zan's underdog pick here. So I got to start with Marcin Prachnio. I like that leg kick approach, and I think it gets the job done against Philipe Lins. I'm also taking a look at, let me think here, Tyson Pedro. So I do want to take one of those fights that have the steeper odds. Tyson Pedro should get the job done. Again, like Zan mentioned, even if he's 60% of who he was, he should get the job done versus Villanueva. And I'm also taking a look at Marc-André Barriault. And again, like Zan mentioned, Jourdain Wright, dangerous in round one, but as this fight goes on, I can see Marc-André Barriault kind of having his way and sort of picking Jourdain Wright apart, closing distance, and really being effective from that perspective. Now, with that three-fight parlay, $100 will return a profit of $239. So again, $339 in terms of the total money that you receive back. $250 will return a $598 profit. So some pretty decent money available on the board, but also somewhat of a difficult card in some ways. So don't be too trigger happy when making your bets, but hopefully our breakdowns, our analysis did provide you with some insight as to how to formulate your parlays. We want to hear from you in the comments. Let us know what those parlays will be. Let us know who your underdog pick is, and just let us know how you feel about our picks in general. Of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks, and make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. But again, officially signing off. I know Zan isn't here to end the video, but he goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. This has been the UFC Fight Night, Amanda Lemos versus Jéssica Andrade full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.